Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of That Gives Me Anxiety. I don't know if you could tell by how my voice sounds, but I'm not feeling great. Stomach pains, kind of feel sick a little bit. I even got physically ill during my beer league hockey game last night on the bench. I puked, yeah, which could be attributed to being out of shape. You know, it's certainly wrapped up in there somewhere. Took a few COVID tests and negative, just probably got a little stomach thing, which is never fun, right? It's just disgusting. Yeah, so hoping to bounce back here. Yeah, some of it could be attributed to a little bit of stress, I guess. Jamie and I are looking at buying houses here in Charleston, and if you've been alive over the last few years, you've probably heard about how insane the market is right now, and insane it is. I can confirm that. So yeah, that definitely is currently weighing on the both of us trying to figure that out. But a little time, a little patience, and a lot of effort. We'll get there. Well, I've got a great episode lined up today. Today, our anxiety is caused by caves. And to help me out to talk about it, I have Hollis Morrissette, who is anxious about going to caves or thinking about being in caves. Hollis is an actor and a former Mr. U.S.A. I mean, that's quite a title, Mr. U.S.A. And to help us out, I have one of the world's leading cave safety experts, Anmar Mirza. Such a treat to talk to him. He's certainly an adventurous guy and has a lot of insight on how to cave safely and has some stories about tracking down meth labs inside caves. So, a lot of interesting stuff. But before we get there, just want to remind you, if you're liking the show, to please remember to rate and review it. Check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, or YouTube. And if you're liking the show and you want to support it and support me, the Buy Me a Coffee link, contribute as much as you would like to, and it's very much appreciated. I think I cut myself off there. The link is in the description. All right, come on. You heard me say I don't feel good. Lay off me a little bit. Come on. I can hear Ollie, our pup, outside the door, chewing louder. It's like he hears me recording this and wants to be a part of it. He's a ham just like me. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. And enjoy. Joining me now on the podcast to talk about fear of caves is Hollis Morrissette, who has many titles: artist, singer, sword writer. Oh my goodness, songwriter, and Hollis is also a former Mr. United States. Very cool, Hollis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Excited to be here, but also a little anxious to be talking about a fear that you actually suggested to me, and very different. It was a lot of fun to do, but a fear of caves.
Yes, that is very big anxiety of that.
Well, before we get into that, I wanted you to introduce yourself to everybody, and I definitely want to hear about what it was like being Mr. United States.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. So I am obviously Hollis Morrissette. I want to say obviously because you just announced my name. I say I'm a human being first, and then artist. Just an all-around care person, giving, all that. In terms of being one of the former Mr. United States pageant title holders, it was really fun. It was a dream come true. I manifested it starting at the age of 13. I've always wanted to be a pageant title holder, and I won my state title as Mr. Michigan United States, and then I competed in my 16-week pageant competition, and now here I am, and it was a really great experience. And I actually ended up getting my reign extended too, so I got it extended into 2021.
Cool, yeah. Is it similar to like the other pageants? I'm more familiar with. I forgot what it's called. The one that's usually televised, where you have to have like a special skill. What was yours?
Yes, so you're on the right track. Mr. United States is the brother organization to Miss USA.
Okay.
So it's like the brother sister pageants. And skills, you get to really choose your skill. Mine was singing, and it kind of goes hand in hand. You still have your evening wear You still have swimwear, your fitness, and then your talent portion. And I sang for my talent portion.
Very cool. Well, you'll have to share some pictures if you have some. I'm sure you do. That'd be fun. Did you get to wear like a really cool tux or something like that for your evening wear?
Yeah. So I had mine. I wore a really nice piece, nice dinner jacket, which ended up being suede, but the breast flaps were more like a velvet.
Fun.
I did simple black and white, and it was very nice. And I did a
Very
bow tie.
cool. My fiance and I have started to discuss our wedding attire, and I've said, "Oh man, I want like a nice, probably a little bit outside of the bounds of just like black and white dinner jacket or tuxedo jacket." So I've begun looking at, and she's supportive of that, which is great. I want a little something. I can't quite put my hand on it, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
We'll go for bold colors, I would say, because that's really in. You can't go wrong with a bold color. My dinner jacket was supposed to be black and red, but it wasn't going to arrive in time. And my competition happened to be during the pandemic, so everything was delayed. So then I was like, well, my secondary option is black and white.
Very cool.
Off-white ivory cream, but
well, it's good to have options, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right. Thank you so much for explaining that to me. That sounds so interesting and very cool. Let's talk about fear of caves. So you reach out to me on Instagram, which I'm always open for people to do, for people who are listening. If you're listening to this and you're like, hey, like I have a cool idea or something that is a little bit scary to me, do exactly what Hollis did. I really like it. So definitely go for it. You gave me a few options, but then you were also like, but I also have this other one, a fear of caves. So tell me a little bit about your fear of caves, and have you ever been inside a cave?
I've been inside of a cave, I want to say twice, but I remember once when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
And it was nothing like the movie and like what you see in the movies, but it was still nice rock, and it was like this open space. And I think I did it, when you used to go to camp, I used to go to the YMCA. And have those different camps where you can explore different areas of nature. And I think it put a little bit of ease because I was with people, but it still gave me anxiety because I'm a big thinker, think way too much into stuff. And I just was like, okay, what if this thing collapses on me? And so now it's just one of those things that really sits in my head. Like all the time, it just randomly pops in. Caves are cool and awesome, but I still don't know if I want to go inside another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Do you have a lot of anxiety, or is that just like more like a fear?
No, I do have a lot of anxiety. I do. And again, with the claustrophobia, that ties in with it. Like I have these fears. I don't want to put this out there, but I have a fear of like being shut in a trunk of a car that doesn't have like an escape latch, or getting shoved in a locker, even though I'm not in high school anymore and that never happened. But those that closed off where no one is going to be able to find me, that sits with me.
Those are definitely scary things. You have quite an imagination. That's really what a lot of anxiety is imagining these situations, right? And then thinking that like, well, if I can think of it, it could happen, right? You even said with becoming Mr. United States, you kind of dreamt it and then it came to fruition. So if it's like, if something amazing and good could happen, I guess the mentality is, well, this bad thing of a cave collapse could happen too.
Yeah, the movie Kill Bill doesn't help, because when she was buried, I'm going to stop because that really another thing.
But she punches her way out of it. She nails it.
I think if that happened to me, it's okay. I'll lay here. I'm going to try and dig my way out.
Your fears are claustrophobia and like a collapse, the potential for collapse, I guess, are the two main things I'm hearing. To the listeners, I haven't mentioned this yet. So I also interviewed one of the world's leading cave experts, Anmar Mirza. And so I think now is a good time to play the first clip.
Okay, sounds good.
So let me get this straight. In today's day and age, you're supposed to be drinking a ton of water, doing yoga, making sure you and your whole family is happy, strike a good work life balance, exercise, read books, watch movies, eat healthy meals, be a big part of your community, and get 8 hours of sleep. It's unrealistic. It's too much. Well, that's why there's Instacart to take a little bit off your plate or help put a little bit on your plate. Oh, I'm so sorry. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and items that you need from the grocery store, fresh produce, all your favorites, everything you want, and they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do your shopping for you. Just remove it from your to-do list, just with a few clicks. And you'll have your items delivered to your door in as fast as an hour. It's pretty quick. And through the link in the episode description, they're offering free delivery on your first order over $35. But you got to make sure you click the link in the description. That tells Instacart that this show sent you and it helps support the show. And you can also take advantage of the free delivery. So yeah, be nice to yourself. Give Instacart a shot. Joining me on the podcast now is Anmar Mirza. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Great. So excited to have you. You've held many titles in, as you were just explaining to me, but you're an expert in cave rescues. Such an interesting field. Well, thank you so much for your time here.
Sure.
Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background in cave rescues?
Okay. Well, professionally, I'm an assistant director of risk management at Indiana University. I also teach an emergency medical technician class. I started caving when I was 13. I've caved in Bloomington, Indiana to start with. And when you cave in Bloomington, Indiana, especially in the early 80s through the 90s, you got involved in a lot of rescues because we actually had on average about one a month for many, many years.
Oh, wow.
And so I went on my first actual cave rescue when I was 14 years old. So I've been on about 150 real rescues in that time period since I first started caving. And that kind of naturally led me into a lot of things. It's why I'm an emergency medical technician and now an instructor for EMT. I became involved with the National Cave Rescue Commission, taking classes and helping out teaching seminars within the central region, the area around where I live. I then became an instructor with the National Cave Rescue Commission, and then eventually became the central region coordinator. I did that for about 10 years. And was the national coordinator for the NCRC for 12 years. And I just recently accepted the position of the Central Region Coordinator of the newly developed vertical training commission that the NSS, the National Speleological Society, is putting out.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just for fun, I also wear a few other hats as well. I'm the property manager for the NSS Richard Blends Nature Preserve, which has Buckner Cave on it. And I'm typically caving a couple of times a week, and I'm involved with a couple of different project caves, the primary which is the James Cave Project down in Kentucky, which is the second longest running cave project in the U.S.
Very cool. So I'm curious, what are people being rescued from? What are the dangers when entering a cave?
So that's an excellent question. A lot of people have this perception, if they're not cavers, they have this perception that caves are just dangerous places. Mm-hmm. And they can be. And that's the key thing to remember, is that they can be. For the unprepared, it's not a forgiving environment. If you trip and fall out on a sidewalk in Long Island where you are, you whip out your cell phone, you dial 911, 5 minutes later, an ambulance has picked you up, 10 minutes later, you're in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Well, cell phones don't work in caves, and for the most part. So somebody has to go out, they have to get help, they have to come and get you out and extricate you out, carry you out. And so it can be hours and hours and hours. And so you might, if you're going to die from a trauma injury, your highest chance of survival is in that first hour from when the trauma happens to when you get to definitive care. That doesn't happen in most caves. But the biggest thing that happens to people in caves is getting lost. Mm-hmm. Now, it used to be getting lost and out of light. But actually, since I started caving, lighting technology has changed so much that we actually rarely find people who are out of light anymore, because LED lights and the batteries that they're, even the cheap ones, are lasting, hundreds of hours in many cases. And I kind of have this joke that if I ever get trapped in a cave somewhere, they're going to find my desiccated corpse with my light still running. But it didn't used to be that way. And in the early days of caving, after people stopped using candles and torches and the like, but they were using miner's lamps, you could only carry 10 or 20 hours at the most worth of light, and your light needed constant care. So we've gone from lost and out of light to lost. And for the most part, that's probably about 90%. And yes, a lot of statistics are just kind of estimates, but I've done enough rescues that I can actually say that's a pretty close estimate, that especially the rescues I've done, but most people get lost. Now that getting lost can then result in other problems, but it oftentimes starts with getting lost. And the simple solution to that is to, first off, never cave alone. There's our basic caving rules here. Always make sure you have adequate light. And then one of the most important ones that you can do is let somebody know where you're going and when you expect to be back out. And so if you're overdue, then they'll hopefully call people who know the cave and they can come and look for you. One of the most dangerous things that you can do is to go caving by yourself and don't tell anybody where you're going, and not in known caves. So if you're, just happen to know of a cave on a neighbor's farm and you decide to go off and explore it yourself and you don't show up, nobody knows where you are. And like in my county, there's 400 caves. We cannot physically search every single cave in the county in a reasonable time frame.
Right. Yeah. Another thing I feel people are nervous about is that they're going to encounter some kind of a bat, a bear. I mean, how likely do you think that is for someone going into a cave?
So the most dangerous thing you're going to encounter in most caves, as far as other creatures go, are other people. Bats live in lots and lots of different caves. Bats are cavers' mascots. Matter of fact, our sticker is a little yellow and black sticker with bats on it.
Nice.
So cavers love bats. We very strongly protect them. For the most part, bats are going to be completely harmless for you. I have been in situations in caves where the evening bat flight was either leaving or returning, and 500,000 bats were coming through a very small passage I was in.
Oh my
gosh. Laid down on the
Yeah.
ground, watched 500,000 bats fly overhead for about 20 minutes, and they were fine. Yeah. Now, bats do carry certain diseases, and the most common reason people in the United States will get rabies is from a bat bite. About 70% of all rabies cases originate from bat bites. However, bats aren't just going to fly onto you and bite you. They don't do that. They're going to do their best to avoid you. Most people who get bit by bats, they get bit because they had one, say, in their bedroom at night, and it landed on them, they rolled over, and then the bat bit defensively.
Oh, wow.
And the problem with bat bites is that their teeth are really tiny. You may not even know you've been bitten. And so, you get bit by a wild animal, you go, oh, I might need to go get a rabies shot. Get bit by a bat, you didn't even know it. But in caves, I've spent a substantial portion of my life in caves, and including having handled bats along with bat biologists and the like. And as long as you're not disturbing them, they're not going to bite you. They don't get tangled in your hair or anything like that, like kind of the common misconceptions. I have, however, been in very small crawlways face to face with a raccoon that was trying to go the direction I was going, I was trying to go in, they were trying to go out, and we both went the other direction. You don't want to ever corner a wild animal. I've been in a small crawlway near an entrance, a cave that had vultures that had nested in the cave. And vultures are very, very aggressive at defending their territory, and their defense is to actually vomit on you. And vulture vomit is incredibly acidic. Luckily, I didn't get puked on by a vulture, but I've heard of it happening to cavers. Near entrances of caves, you might, especially in summertime, you might have snakes like copperheads or rattlesnakes that are taking shelter in that area. But for the most part, if you're being relatively careful, the critters in the caves are not that big of a problem. Our area in Indiana, we don't have bears. Bears did used to den in caves in the wintertime in Indiana, and they still do in some states. But again, those are pretty rare. I actually, believe it or not, I did just actually read about a rescue from some dogs in the cave. I want to say it was in Tennessee. I'm blanking on exactly where it was, where the dogs chased a bear into the cave, and they were down a pit. The rescuers actually had to go in past the bear to get to the dogs. But
wow.
It all turned out okay. And again, for the most part, other people are going to be the most dangerous things you encounter in caves. I've been called to go into caves after fugitives, as well as people who had suspected meth labs in caves.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. Anmar, I think he's well, first of all, he is an expert.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, Patrick. Even though he is helping put some form of ease to my mind, I'm still not comfortable going into caves. For example, I know he said that bats are mostly harmless, right? I don't really have a fear of bats per se, but I think for me, I don't have a fear of them, but I just don't want them touching me.
Yeah.
He said that unless you fight them or you try to swat them, then they'll react. And I'm like, that's cool. But then I don't like when he said that their teeth are so small that if they bite you, you won't know that you're being bitten.
I know, that's pretty wild, right?
Well, but I want to know if I'm being bitten.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's kind of like one of those spider bites, a brown recluse or something. Like if you're sleeping, if you don't know you're being bitten and then you find out about it later, I would rather know what's going on now to get some medical attention.
Right. It's a fear that you're just going to drop dead without knowing why, or you wasted all this time that you could be seeking medical attention. But yeah, I get that too. A fear of bats doesn't need to be bitten. It's the fluttering like right by your ears that would be like, ooh.
I know, and like little tiny hairs and stuff. He did have some really great points. I like when he said that not caves, excuse me, technology. He mentioned how it's not how it was back in the day where like you're carrying a flashlight and flashlight might die out. Nowadays, you have LED lighting that lasts days. I think that's helped a little bit because if you get lost, which he seems to feel or believe that that's one of the biggest issues, is getting lost.
Yeah.
Because you can go down a certain path, but you might not remember where you're going. But that's not going to happen to me, I'm just going to say, because I have a good direction. And when I feel like I'm lost, I'm one of those people that check behind my shoulder like every 2 seconds. So I'm going to know exactly where I am. I'm like, oh, no, there was a chip in that rock. So we made a left there. And then eventually I go to the light.
Do you even do that like when you're going to the bank or something like that? Just like running errands, just like checking in on where you are?
Yes.
Yeah.
But because it's more habitual.
Yeah.
So I think I just do it naturally. And when I'm walking my dog, I do it. I think it's not something that I do because I think I'm going to be attacked. I just think I just naturally look over my shoulder. So I think those natural instincts will kick in if I decided to go into another.
Yeah, that makes sense. Man, the vultures potentially vomiting on you. In nature, that's where animals are. We're entering their territory. I don't want to be like making people afraid of that, but that particular animal besides a bear is, I don't know, I guess I project onto bears like Winnie the Pooh or like Yogi, so I'm like less afraid. I should be more afraid of bears, but vultures potentially turning a corner and having a vulture like throw up on me is an absolute nightmare scenario.
Absolutely gross. I don't want anyone or thing to throw up on me. And I guess sometimes it happens, but I don't know. Maybe you would think that enough human interaction with the vulture, they would, I don't want to say control it. Maybe they can't. I don't know, but I don't like that.
Yeah.
Wants to be thrown up on. And
he
mentioned, and this was true, what he said, that when you're in a cave, he said, the most dangerous encounter that you probably are going to have, besides maybe an animal that's not under control, which is rare, is a human being. Now that I said, well, that's true, because you have encounters with dangerous human beings at the corner store.
Right.
So I don't imagine it being any less than a cave where they try to have you cornered or something.
If you're hiding in a cave, right? He mentions at the end of the clip that he's gone in after fugitives. There's a reason why this person went in to a cave. They're really trying to hide from society, and that if that's true, I guess that is, I mean, it's always the answer that people are the scariest thing, right? That you'll encounter because we're harmful to each other in every conceivable way.
Yeah, they are.
I also wanted to bring up like a positive that he was saying, and that is in ways that you can take care of yourself, right? And that is making sure that you're telling someone that you're going into a cave, because, right, he's talking about like even a trip and a fall isn't so bad on the sidewalk, but in a cave,
Right.
that could be really bad, right? If you break your leg and you can't walk out or crawl out, telling someone is the biggest and most important aspect of being safe in a cave. So I definitely wanted to put an underline under that, because it's like, it seems obvious once you hear it, but I can see people just being like, what, I've gone to this cave
Yeah.
how many times, right? If you go that often. But yeah, I just want people to be safe out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why he said never cave alone.
Right. There you go. That sounds like a great bumper sticker if you're a caver.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
cool. Let's go to the second clip where Anmar discusses things you should know about caves before getting into them, just how safe caving can be. What would you recommend? I mean, you mentioned light and talking to someone. Is there something or like a checklist of things that people should have on them to cave safely?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and that kind of leads me to just a little advertisement for the National Speleological Society. It's the nation's caving organization, caves.org, pretty easy to remember.
Yeah.
They have on there what we call the Guide to Responsible Caving. And it's got that checklist of everything you need to know when you start caving. But the basics, adequate light sources, letting somebody know where you're going, when you expect to be back, not caving alone, having a helmet or other proper equipment, rugged clothing, gloves, boots. The other really important thing is to know what the cave does in weather. And if you don't know what the cave does in weather, don't go in. So a lot of caves, and probably the majority of caves, are either formed by or still actively have water in them. Mm-hmm. And so they will respond to weather events. And so getting trapped or killed by rising water in the cave can be a very real risk, and probably a substantial percentage of the people who die in caves die because of flooding events. So that is one of the there are caves that I go into all the time. I'll go into regardless of what the weather's doing, because I know they're perfectly safe. Water will not go into those places in the caves that I'm going to go into. But I know that about those caves. If it's a cave I don't know, I won't go in if it's going to be a substantial risk of flooding.
And that substantial risk is like a big rainstorm is coming through or
sure.
Something
well,
like that.
It can be a rainstorm. It can also be, we've got a lot of snow on the ground and the weather's going to warm up today really quickly and all that snow's going to start melting. Or you get a rain event when there's snow on the ground and the ground's frozen. Now you can have, a half an inch of rain can now suddenly turn into several inches of equivalent of rain. Mm-hmm. So a cave that might not flood in the summertime, if we get a half an inch of rain, in the winter when there's 6 inches of snow on the ground, may flood substantially.
Oh, wow. That's a good reminder. I mean, I didn't know that was possible. I feel so lost. Normally in these interviews, I have some concept of I'm doing like public speaking or flying, but I'm learning all about these things. So it's great things to know about. One thing that I feel like I've heard or is maybe it's more related to the forest, but I feel like I've been taught if you're lost, stay where you are. Does that hold water in if I was to be lost in a cave?
So we have something in cave rescue we call answer number one. Answer number one means that it depends on the situation. Okay. We get asked a lot of questions. Sometimes we don't have a good answer for you. In general, yes, if you're lost in a cave, stay where you are. And there are some caves where that absolutely would be the best advice you can give. In other caves, that may not be the best advice. However, again, if you know little enough about caving, that's probably your safest course of action. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm lost, chances are pretty good that staying stationary is not going to be my best course of action, because as an experienced caver, I may get to a point where I recognize something within the cave, or I know enough ways to route find in the cave to find the way out.
Okay.
So it really, really depends. Your average person who's never been caving before, if they were to get lost in the cave, yes, probably stay stationary. Now, I spend a lot of time outside in the woods. If I'm lost in the woods, it's the same deal. If I can't quickly find my way to the proper route, my best course of action is to stay stationary, because that's the highest probability searchers of finding me. So again, it's not as hard and fast as being out in the woods, but for the novice, it's still pretty good advice.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's good to know. What kind of background do you think you should have on a cave? Like how well should you know where you're going?
So a lot of that really is another excellent question. A lot of that really depends on your level of experience. So the kind of caves that I go into to do the exploration, novices absolutely should not be going into. If you follow the safe caving rules and you get some education, caving is actually an incredibly safe activity. It's about 1/10 of the risk on a per person hour basis of just about everything else that you can do. I mean, playing baseball is more risky than going caving. Mm-hmm. But there are caves in every area that are commonly traveled. We sort of jokingly call them the Boy Scout caves because all the Boy Scout groups and the church groups and all that go to these caves. These are the caves that there's very low risk in the caves. Buckner, the cave that I manage, is one of those caves. It's not a flooding danger in most of the cave. There's only one very small part of the cave that can potentially flood, and very few people ever even go to that area, and you're not going to get trapped in that area. The other thing that makes Buckner relatively safe is there's not any large drops in it. It's not like you're going to fall down a 200-foot pit inadvertently or get trapped in a really tight little crevice. Another thing that makes Buckner relatively safe, and a lot of these well-traveled caves safe, is that because they're well-traveled, unstable areas in the cave have been stabilized. So most caves are geological features. They've been there for anywhere from tens of thousands to several million years. And that rock that may have been precariously balanced there for the last 500,000 years, somebody comes along and brushes against it and it falls. Well, in a cave like Buckner, that's already happened. So not to say that it can't happen, but it's incredibly unlikely. Caves are actually very safe from that standpoint because they are temperature stable, so they don't have the freeze-thawing cycling like you're going to get out in cliffs and out on mountains. Mm-hmm. I was actually just in the Grand Canyon a couple of weeks ago, and we actually watched a really major rock slide happen on the valley wall, beside, not next to us, but across the valley from us. In the tens of thousands of hours I've spent caving, I've seen rocks spontaneously fall twice. Mm. So, and that's, again, pretty rare. And it's even pretty rare for people to disturb rocks that will hurt or kill them. It does happen, and especially in lesser traveled caves. Mm. But for your average person, getting back to your original question there, for your average person, they should know, is this cave one that is relatively traveled? What does the cave do in the weather? What do the people who go caving in this area think of this cave? Mm-hmm. So if I were giving a novice advice, I would tell them this is not something you should go in without somebody who's experienced, who knows that cave.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like great advice. And you kind of touched on this. It seems like a forest that you were going to go on a hike. A lot of these caves kind of have trails in a sense that have been commonly walked about. Okay.
Yeah. So something I teach new cavers and people who listen to this podcast who've started caving with me will chuckle at this because it's kind of become a famous quote, that caves are three-dimensional and caves are full of optical illusions. Mm-hmm. So caves out in the forest, you're looking right and left. Mm-hmm. In a cave, you're looking right, left, up, and down. Mm-hmm. And a cave, when you're looking the other direction, looks totally different than when you're looking this direction. So you go in, we teach people to always look back when they change whatever they're doing. If they go from a crawlway to a room or vice versa, turn around and look back and see what they came from. Most caves that have a lot of traffic in them will have pretty well established trails in them. That can actually be confusing though, because everybody goes down this dead end passage that seems like the way out, but it's not the way out. But that's where the obvious trail is because everybody goes down that passage. Mm-hmm. And for people who vandalize the cave by leaving graffiti like arrows or the like, so that's not something we do in caving, is there will oftentimes in these well-traveled caves, there'll be arrows pointing both directions down the same passage, and they'll both say out, just because hundreds of different people have left them. So we teach people when they're navigating in caves, if you absolutely have to leave a navigation aid, you leave something that can be picked up on the way out, such as flagging tape or a siloom stick. And that way you're not marking on the cave walls.
Great. Yeah, that is good advice. I was going to ask something like that, like you could leave like a string or something, but yeah, definitely don't want to damage you.
String is one of those funny things that I always get chuckled with. String is actually one of the worst things that you can do for caves because it's very difficult to carry enough string because mm-hmm. you're often going half a mile or a mile or more into a cave. And In Buckner, there have been a few times I've actually, because we clean a lot of garbage out of the cave from the thoughtless visitors, we will see some string in the cave, we start balling it up, and then I'll encounter a group and here's your ball of string here.
Oh.
So yeah, we don't recommend leaving string or any kind of permanent marker. Caves, for the most part, there are a few very, very mazy caves that it can be difficult to navigate in. But for the most part, most caves aren't that difficult. There may be 1 or 2 passages. Buckner is 3.5 miles of passage, and it's kind of complex. Your listeners can go to bucknercave.org and see a map of our cave. But even with that complexity, there's a limit to how lost you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So we don't tend to recommend people go in caving blind. But if you follow the basic rules of look back when you come to a change in the passage, and if you're going into a cave, go in with somebody who knows the cave, and then you can learn how to route find. If you have to go in by yourself, make sure that you go in a little ways, learn that route, and then come back some other time you go a little bit farther.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, why not go with someone who knows the cave? Just make it easy.
You'll have a better time. They'll show you all the neat stuff.
Look who we got here. It's our friends at My Software Tutor. Can Excel be my friend? Many people have wondered this for years. The answer is yes, it can. Excel doesn't have to be like the friend that your mom makes you hang out with in elementary school. It's weird. It's always stuff with boogers, right? What's wrong? What's up? Why is that kid always eating boogers? Their house always had the best snacks too. And there he is. Boogers. Well, Excel doesn't have to be like that weird kid. Unless you were that weird kid. Were you? Be honest. You know. I'm not actually asking. I can't hear your response, but you know. And it's okay if you were. You know, just take it easy with the boogers. Just talking about boogers to Oregon ad read. Don't worry. They didn't write that part. That was an improvisation. My Software Tutor offers 3 levels of real-time Zoom-based courses with a live instructor. They deliver practical, functional business skills in a friendly and supportive environment. It can be daunting, right? You need that supporting environment to learn Excel. There's no stupid questions. It could be really difficult. And as we know, when we talk about it on this podcast all the time, it could be really daunting to learn something new and put yourself out there. So think of this as like a kindergarten for learning something new and helping your job prospects. Or be better at the job you already have. Get that raise, get that whatever, take pictures of it for Instagram. Yeah, that'll be cool. Keeping it as vague as possible so that you can input your own. Just making a mad lib of your own desires. These courses will increase your marketability, whether you're an employee, job seeker, consultant, or contractor. Register at mysoftwaretutor.com and use the promo code POD20 to save 20% off all registrations. Thank you so much to My Software Tutor. Yeah, guys, take advantage of that 20% off and confidently list Excel on your resume. So caving is safer than baseball, huh? That's kind of surprising to think. I mean, because I look at baseball as really safe, right? Like, I don't know, you may pull your hamstring, right, if you're older like I am and you don't stretch as well as you should have. But yeah, that really puts it into perspective. I guess especially if you're going to a more well-traveled cave as opposed to a cave that you heard about, right? There's a big difference.
Well, I will say I found that to be pretty shocking myself, because he did say that caving is safer than some sports. And a person who's grown up playing sports, I played basketball, ran track, I played tennis, I've done some baseball and volleyball. I agree with you, hearing a hamstring or maybe just hitting a shoulder or hip or something. I still did not know that. It still doesn't make me feel at ease, but I just didn't know that it's safer than some sports, because I think for me, I'm always, and I'm trying to get out of this mindset, but I'm always thinking of the worst case scenario. And I'm just, like I said before, it's just my luck that I go into the cave and it collapses. I've always been the just my luck kind of person. Like, I'd be the one driving down the freeway and a little shopping bag is rolling around, passing by. Just my luck, it lands on the front of my car. I'm carrying my mail, no one drops it. Just my luck, I trip and fall and drop out my mail. So, but I can see in a sense why he would say that, because it's a structure that's been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really doing a whole lot besides walking and exploring for the most part.
Yeah, exactly. And especially going back to what I was saying about a well-traveled cave versus a lesser so, right? Like he mentioned the rocks that are loose have probably already been pushed over. And so that's less of a concern in a well-traveled cave, which is, yeah, that certainly alleviates that concern for me at least. But I wanted to go back to you saying that just my luck. It's funny to hear you talk about these negatives, and our brains are wired, right, to remember more negative things, but you've certainly had good things happen to you. You were Mr. United States. You're talking about all these other podcasts that you're being a guest on. It's I'd love for you to, and you mentioned trying to work on this, to like move away from that mindset in some way, maybe through meditation or yoga or something like that helps you, because I know what that feels like, and that's a painful kind of cycle of thought, right?
I agree with you. We are wired that way, which is why I do meditation, and
Oh,
I
good.
I do that, and I do prayer daily. And what it does, it helps me actually weigh out the positives that outweigh the negatives. Because one thing during my journey that I'm realizing is, even though you have those negative thoughts and they can be powerful, your positive thoughts are more powerful.
Mm.
And to be completely honest, when you are thinking about something negative or you're thinking about something that goes wrong, you're really creating more of a problem than what it really is. And it probably
Yeah.
doesn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
but it's amazing how those negative things don't really exist, but we make them up in our heads and we overlook the positive things that do exist. And then that's why we fail to thank them or be thankful for those positives or to manifest. So I definitely would say more positives than negatives. And that's why I try to focus on. So I'm count my blessings daily. I
Good for
do.
you. Yeah. And also, if for a lot of people who start to imagine bad things happening, they may miss out on something that life is offering to them. And so that to me is such a tragedy, that where you may miss out on experiences just because you're what ifing yourself to staying home, right?
Yeah. And what ifs don't really matter.
Exactly. Exactly. It was also interesting to hear about what you should know about going into caves, right? Like that was not obvious to me, the part about the flooding, and that's a real safety concern that you should definitely be aware of. So that was a good thing to reiterate.
That one took me back a bit just because that brings me back to the assumptions. And I think just because of my one cave experience, in quotations, one caving experience, and what you see on TV, I think it really, because Anmar, he's been caving pretty much all his life. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned before that at 14 years old, he had his first cave rescue that he did.
Yeah.
So he's been doing this a very long time. So he's an expert. But I think for me, making that assumption, and he's helping me to open my eyes a bit more. When I think of a cave, well, before listening to Anmar, when I thought about caves, I thought about those caves that sat on the beach
Mm.
in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
where it's very hard for the water to reach. Or maybe you have those caves so high up in the Grand Canyon where you're like, well, if it rained, the it's way too deep for that water to rise. But it's a real thing, and I did not know that that's something that you also have to watch out for. And I think it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those eye-opening things for me and for other listeners, that it's not going to it's the least likely to happen, but it can happen, but it's a substantial risk.
Right. And that's, you just got to do your homework kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
So the one experience I have with a cave is, it was in Mexico, and it was kind of like it was definitely like a tourist trap. I did it with my family, but
Yeah.
it was fun. And basically what it was everyone got a life jacket and a helmet, and you jump in the water in this river, and this river like bends through a cave. And so to the point that you can't see anything, And I remember just like floating there, no way of being able to like get out of the water, and just like my panic increasing, just being like, oh man, there's like probably some shark or something in like the dark. And I don't know, it just took a few seconds, right? My anxiety spiked and my fear spiked, but then you get in there and you realize this is ludicrous. There's like dozens of people from all over the world. It's beautiful. The water's beautiful. And you're going through, okay. I mean, it just took me a second to appreciate where I was, and that this wasn't like an everyday experience, and that it was fucking cool, right?
You on a rafter?
No, we were just in the water.
Okay, you know what? And you did this in Mexico. I've done this too.
Yeah.
Actually, something very similar, where I was more like on a raft, like on a raft boat type thing with a life jacket. Okay, so to piggyback off of that, you just sparked up a memory. I've done that like 2 or 3 times. And it was in a cave. But I think the reason why I did not have fear, and I actually got in the water and swam around, but I think the reason why I didn't have fear of that cave is because you could see the opening and you could see the ending.
Oh, okay.
You could see the sunlight coming through. There was a moment where like you're going around the corner, so maybe 5 to 7 seconds of darkness. But that wasn't enough to spark up anything where I'm like, oh, well, you know, I could still kind of see the light a little bit. So that one was fun, but I didn't know that was a cave. Now that I know when you described it, so okay, I have done some more caving than what I have.
Look at you. Yeah.
That's fun to me. Maybe because I see light out of both ends.
But, yeah, right. It's like something you don't want to do, right? It's like a wedding you don't want to go to. You're like, just got to get to 10 p.m. I just got to get there, right? And same thing. It's like, I see the sunlight. I just got to get there.
Yeah.
I just got to hang on.
It's funny because I'm more of a daredevil. I will run in the middle of the field at night with no fear of a coyote coming or a lion or anything like that. I know that's going to sound weird. Like, well, how can you do that? Like, I have done some daredevil things. Like, I'm a rebel. I want to jump out of a plane, all that. I want to go to outer space. I don't know if you've seen those YouTube videos where they can like jump from the outer surface of Earth.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, the Red Bull guy.
Yeah, and they jump. Like, I want to do that. But I guess, I don't know, caves are just different. but the cave that I did do, that was fun. So that was fine. I like that one. I'll do it again.
It seems like you like knowing that like space and room is okay. You just don't like the walls kind of closing in on you.
Yeah, but you know, I'm getting over that.
Good. Know? That's great.
Yeah, it's helping. As long as I'm like in a boat or some water or something where it's like flowy, then I'll do it. Even if you can't see, and I'll try this out. The next time I go caving, even if I have a tour guide, that's the only way I'm going to do it. If they take me on a tour, like on a boat or something, and even if I don't know where we're going, I'm going to trust the tour guide and I'll do it.
That's awesome. And I think you'll enjoy the experience. You seem like the type of person that if life presents an opportunity, the life experience will win over your fear, which is, well, that's a very nice way of living, I think.
Yeah, you only get one life, so you might as well.
YOLO. Oh, God. The other thing that is in this clip is the idea of people bringing string to not lose their way, which is hilarious to think.
At first, when he mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's smart. But when I was thinking of string, I was thinking of yarn, like something a bit heavier. But then he was like, it's still not a good idea to really bring it because someone might be coming up behind you that you might not know on that path, and they might kick over that string. You know, that string doesn't have any LED lighting. So how are you going to see it in the dark? And all these different things that he named. And I said, yeah, because even though it's a cave, there's still some airflow. So it could blow off in the wind or something, or get trapped under like a sand or rock or something. So I would have to agree with him about not leaving string because it's not really predictable.
And just being protective of the caves too, just like any other environment, right? If you go camping, pack in and then pack out. You don't want to litter in these caves and that kind of thing, right? And He mentioned people tricking other people by pointing both ways being out. Again, people are the biggest concern in caves.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody wants to get stuck in there. Like you want to go in, explore, and then leave. And then if you do get lost, then he mentioned there's no cell service.
Mm-hmm.
Now that sucks.
Right.
I don't know. But I guess it's understandable because you're somewhere where there's no tower or it's
Right.
not reachable. But you still would have, hopefully the person would go in with, and this is why he's saying, if it's your first time, make sure you have some information, because if you're going into a cave, I'm hoping you go in there with more than just an LED lighting. So if you have your cell phone, even if it doesn't work, hopefully it's fully charged so you have a flashlight.
Yeah, backups.
Leave your phone.
And bring some sandwiches just in case.
You got to have those sandwiches and some water.
Right. And stay where you are is for a novice caver. Holds up, and I feel like we're taught that as kids. If you get lost in the woods or lost in a cave or lost in a grocery store as a little kid, stay where you are and someone will find you. And that's why it's important to tell people that you're going in there, just to hit that again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please be careful, and please don't go alone.
Yeah, right. I don't know why you would, but that's not true. I go on hikes alone. So if caves are your thing, I could see why people would want to just be doing their own thing. We all need that time.
Yes.
Well, I think it's a good time to go to the third clip, which is a little bit frightening, where he talks about being in small spaces. So here we go. All right, you've got an event coming up. You got to send a card. So you get the card. It's looking good. You chose a good one. You grab a pen. You grab a beverage of some kind, alcoholic, ginger ale. I've been big on the ginger ale lately. Even the diet. Am I just old? I'm just old. But you get all that. You sit down, and then your mind is blank. You don't know what to say. It can be daunting. There's a lot of pressure. You gotta fit it in a certain area and gotta look nice. Go easy on yourself. There's someone here to help you. Introducing the Cardist Studio. With so many birthdays and occasions, there's no time to shop for cards, write the cards, and buy the stamps. It's too many steps. So many chances for anxiety. Now you can do it all right where you sit. That's the best. That's the best. Because the Cardist Studio does it for you. They write it down for you. Introducing a writing specialist for the message inside your greeting cards. Don't get those canned responses. Have someone write something truly heartfelt. By the way, this is my friend Mary Alice who runs this company. She's very good. She sent me one of these. Whew. I know I said that in a joking tone, but I mean it. It was very thoughtful. She sent me one after my grandfather passed away. That means a lot. I still have the card. I mean, that shows you all you need to know. All right, here's how it works. All you do is pick the card and tell why you're sending it. No more errands. No more anxiety. For a message from your heart, but not your hands. It's okay. You still mean it. Sit back and just enjoy your relationships. Wouldn't that be nice? TheCardistStudio.com. Thoughtful, just got easy. And you can use the promo code AnxietyPod for 10% off all orders. All right, friends, get out there and send those greeting cards from the Cardist Studio. Are you okay with being in a tight space in a cave, or is that something that has caused you specifically anxiety?
So I'm like many cavers. Tight spaces don't bother me to the degree they probably do other people. I was not trying to exaggerate or make it sound really macho or whatever, but I was describing a trip that I went on to a outdoor sports writer who was also ex-Special Forces. And as I was describing this trip to him, and the fact that at one point I was kind of head down in this really tight place and kind of stuck in there and was having a great time, I'm looking at this guy just getting white as a sheet. And he stopped me right there and said, I've been in combat and firefights, and nothing has scared me more than what you've been telling me.
Oh, gosh.
So, and again, I'm not trying to be macho. To me, that's the environment that I'm comfortable in.
Yeah.
I've been in tight passages where I'm chest to back on rock and I can only draw half a breath, and I'm okay with that. Now, I have been in passages with water in it where the water was coming up, and I've only got this much airspace, and water's coming up and up and up. And my lips are against the ceiling. And yes, I was scared.
Yeah.
But
What did you do? Did you
well,
have to
actually,
like breathe?
in that particular situation, it turned out that as I was in such a small passage, I was filling the passage completely, and it started out with about that much water, but I was pushing the water ahead of me, and I didn't realize it. Once I figured that out, I just kind of lifted myself up and let the water
Oh,
slide
that's great. Yeah.
by. But yeah, I mean, it was for a few moments there was pretty tense.
Yeah.
But I do know longtime active cavers who have been in really difficult, tight situations who've had that freak out moment. And all of a sudden it's just like, I need to get out right now. It's never happened to me from that standpoint. There have been a few times where I'm sitting there going, okay, calm down, breathe, relax, work the problem. But it's never been that panic situation. I have, however, taken a lot of new people caving. And sometimes I have to talk people through things. And I mean, there are people who will not go back to certain areas just because they did not like how tight it was. I have spent 3 days, we were exploring and mapping a section of cave where we were camped in the cave. I spent 3 days in a passage that was no taller than about that high, so about 1.5 feet high by about 3 or 4 feet wide. And we spent 3 days, and that was the largest area of the cave we were in.
Oh gosh.
So
I couldn't do that.
yeah, going to the bathroom is the real challenge there.
I can only imagine. That's exactly where my brain went.
Really, your listeners do not want the graphic details on that.
Yeah.
But
let their imagination
yes,
go. Yeah.
but it is the range. I mean, and cavers the caving tends to attract people who are okay with tight places.
Of course, yeah. Well, it's a good reminder. You said work the problem to, a lot of times with anxiety, you're letting the runaway train take over as opposed to bringing yourself back into the present and just grounding yourself and going from there as opposed to just giving into something that's not going to help you in the situation. So I'm glad that that hasn't happened to you too much. Well, how can people get a hold of you? Are you active on any social media or any websites you think people should have?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm part of a lot of them. Honestly, anybody who does a web search on my name and caving, you're going to come up with thousands of hits. For many years, I actually owned the first page of Google because of my public figure within caving and cave rescue. But the caves.org, the NSS website, is probably the single point best place to get information. And I'm linked in there in a number of different ways. I'm also, as part of the Richard Blend's Nature Conservancy, which manages Buckner Cave, I'm involved with that. So again, pretty public with that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think you've convinced me to go caving. Do you know of any caves around? I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Do you know of any caves that are in this area?
So you are in actually kind of a caving poor environment, but there are cavers in your area. One of our NCRC instructors is not too far away from you in that area. I won't on the podcast, I won't give his name off, but if you want to go offline, I can give you a hookup with him.
Well, cool. Yeah, I definitely want to give it a shot, and you definitely have calmed my anxiety about doing it because I like hearing how safe activities are, and it's so nice to know what you should have and what you should know before doing it. That when you know what you could do to help yourself, it just helps make everything a bit easier and less scary.
So one final thing there that I don't think we touched on during this, but why go caving? Okay, so for some people it's adventure, for some people it's sport. For me, it's pretty much everything. And I go caving in Buckner once a week to manage the cave, but also to keep in shape for the harder caving I do. But in caving, I have been the first person to ever see something that no one has ever seen before, ever. And there are not many places on planet Earth that you can do that. The first set of eyes, I've taken a camera, put it around a corner on a passage that's totally virgin, nobody's ever been in it, taken a picture before human eyes have ever seen that area. I've seen some of the most incredibly delicately decorated cave passages in the world. And I've been to places that in probably, in the entire time the cave will exist, maybe fewer than a dozen people will ever have seen it. So that to me is just an absolutely fascinating aspect of it. And even among the caving community, even among the well-traveled caves, and like Buckner, And we estimate that something on the order of 750,000 people have been through Buckner over the last 50 or 60 years that it's been open for general visitation. That's still over 50 or 60 years. That's like a hundredth of a percent of the population that have seen that cave. So it's a unique feature. I mean, I just came back from hiking in the Grand Canyon, and millions of people a year see the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in places where, I may be the only person who's ever been there.
That's so cool. Yeah. Just like people like going to the beach or going to the forest to kind of shed modern stresses and their job and stuff. Caving is just another way of doing that.
Yep. And when you're in a cave, you're not bothered by this.
Yeah, that's true.
Cell phones do not work in the cave. We actually teach some of our rescue classes entirely in cave, and there's absolutely no distraction.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, anytime you can get a break from your phone, life is a little bit better.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll let you know when this is ready to go out.
All right, good to meet you.
So he has me going on caving in general, but where he's talking about like he was chest to back and could only draw half a breath. No, that's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could do that.
No, and I think that's where I talked about my claustrophobia. I don't even want to talk about it, but those things to me are just, it really makes you pant, and it makes you feel like the chest is caving in.
Yeah.
Which is weird because like if I'm sitting like on a couch or like on a seating, and there are two people who are next to me, but I'm in the middle and they're squishing me, for whatever reason, I'm not claustrophobic.
Mm.
But for something like that Anmar talked about, I couldn't imagine the feelings that maybe it's different for him because he's the expert, but for someone who's like more beginner stages, that kind of makes me think like, nope, how can I turn around and go back?
Right. Well, especially that one story he shared about like the water rising. He was just like breathing at the top of it. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like a plot to Indiana Jones or something like that.
It really activates your fight or flight.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But I guess like you're saying, it's just, that's where he's comfortable and he's done it since he was 14. It's just kind of like riding a bike for him. He's just, he knows what to expect and knows how to work through the problem, right? As opposed to just letting your anxiety shoot off the charts. It's just like channeling that towards, okay, well, all right, what's the first thing I have to do? Try to move, so try to get this water down so I can breathe, right? Then step 2, on and on and on.
I couldn't imagine trying to, it kind of reminds me of the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
When the boat was starting to sink and people felt trapped, and then people were just like tilting their noses and their mouths to the air to try to breathe what little bit of air they have. But a lot of people don't describe this. When you have that kind of situation, and sometimes even if you're in a playful situation like you're swimming in a pool, people, I think, also forget that when you're in that situation and you are tilting your nose and your mouth towards the air to breathe as much air as possible, you also lose a little bit of sense of hearing, because when that water gets in your ear, then it kind of becomes a little bit more scary, because then you're like, I can't hear anything. I can't hear if someone's coming. I can't hear if a rock is falling or something. So I think that also, he very, very brave for that.
And it feels like it's also hard you have to keep your heart rate down if you can, because that if the increased heart rate will require more oxygen, right? So it's just trying to like work the problem, right? As opposed to like when you can't do that, you're gonna exhaust yourself, and if air is limited as it is, you're not going to be able to get what you need.
I didn't think about that. Yeah. That's why I said, the natural instinct is to pant, but now I didn't think about that. Yes, deep breaths to keep that heart rate down. That's a really great point.
Yeah. In more of the humorous side, he was talking about how he was caving in a very low situation in a small setting where they had to use the bathroom like that. And I don't even want to imagine but like not being able to stand up for days and using the bathroom in there.
Yeah.
It's just, God bless you. You know, if that's your thing, that's your thing.
Well, I think again, it's different when you've done it so many times.
Yeah.
Or again, for beginners, it's like, how am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
But it's funny still because the things that humans do and can come up with to just really create an experience or do what you have to do, I think it's funny. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's it's always fun and cool to hear people doing these extreme things. It's why the Olympics is fun. It's why watching people jump from space, like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
it's just people who are just out there doing it. It's always inspiring to see people pushing the boundaries for sure.
Well, life is about telling stories, so you got to create a story to tell one.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about the experience. So it seems as though, of course, your fear isn't completely gone regarding caves, but it does seem like you did learn a bunch here. I know I certainly did, and I feel a lot better about going caving. And I'm curious kind of how Anmar's thoughts have shifted your anxiety.
I still have some anxiety, I'm going to be honest.
Of
But
course.
with Anwar, I will say he definitely has brought the anxiety down.
Yeah.
So I think before listening to Anmar, me going into a cave was probably at a good 87% no.
Hmm.
But I think it shifted a bit. So I will say my chances of not going into a cave ever again, I'm gonna bring it down to a good 27-30%.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I think I will definitely go into another cave. But what helps is following his expertise and his guidelines.
Hmm.
So I believe now with technology and LED lighting lasting longer, if there is a boat and they make it a fun experience, even if I don't know where I'm going, yes, I'll do it. And making sure that I don't go alone. I think that's another thing. So I say, why not? Yeah, I'm gonna do another caving experience sometime.
That's awesome. Yeah. I also like the idea of us sitting and talking to someone, whether it's Anmar or another expert, and just being like, all right, well, what can I expect? I think once that expectation is set in my mind, and I know, all right, well, we're going to go through this like smaller passage, but it's only 20 feet, right? And so I know, like you were saying about being able to see the end of that cave, it's like, all right, I just got to get through 20 feet and I can just breathe, and that expectation is set. And my imagination can't be like running away, being like, this is my life, I'm stuck here, I'm going to be here forever, right? Like that kind of thing.
No, yeah, I think taking that mindset out. You can't really go into a cave experience or any experience, or whether it's a caving, marriage, friendship, buying a house, whatever. I think when you have those negative thoughts, it takes the fun out of the experience.
Hmm.
Because once you think about, is this going to collapse on me? And then you already missed a possible, what if there's like a green gemstone, something over there, and you're just so focused on getting out of there that you lose out on the experience. You don't get to take pictures. And then, like I said, creating stories. So if you're so focused on the negative and then someone says, oh, how was your experience? Well, it's not fun if you say, I mean, I went, but I was just ready to get out of there. Like that, there was no fun.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
like, what was it like? What was the smell of the environment? Did you
Hmm.
encounter a bear or something? So you have to take the negative thoughts out so that way you can enjoy what really exists, which is the positives.
Absolutely. And there's something seemingly ancient about being in a cave. You go back through evolution, people were living in caves and drawing on caves. And so it's kind of an interesting idea to connect with our ancestors in that way.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
which is cool. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad that you seem a little bit more open-minded to enjoying yourself if you ever the opportunity presents itself to go caving. How can people get a hold of you? Where are you on social media?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all. I had a great time. You're a great
Yeah.
host. And people can find me on Instagram at the Hollis Morrissette. You can find me on Twitter at the Hollis M. Or you can also find me on my website at hollismorrissette.com. And all of my socials are listed there as well.
Awesome. Well, good luck if there are any future pageants in your, even though you've reached the top seemingly, and we'll stay connected.
Of course. Yes. Thank you so much. And I hope everything else goes well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Caves are great. It's a cool thing that you can go in and check them out. I think the thing is, just don't try to be a hero. Do a little research. Probably shouldn't just go into a random cave unless you're Anmar, and you're probably not. So, yeah, but it's so cool, and there's something so ancient about it. So thank you to Hollis, and thank you to Anmar, and thank you to you for listening. Listen, I have another podcast called Death Space Filling the Void. I'd love it if you would check that one out. deathspacepodcast.com. Can't talk. It's one of the symptoms of being sick. I also want to remind you of the Buy Me a Coffee link. If you're liking the show and you want to support it and support me, you can donate any amount that you want. You can buy me a coffee. That would be very much appreciated. There's also the Instacart link in the description. If you click that to sign up, it tells them that this show sent you, which also helps support the show. Then there's My Software Tutor, promo code POD20 for 20% off. And the Cardis Studio with the promo code AnxietyPod for 10% off. And you can also check out a bit more with Anmar and Hollis in the description as well, if you wanted to check them out a little bit further. Well, all right. Get out there and start caving. Why not? Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.